Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Talking Points. It's another day in paradise, or perhaps maybe you might look at that term paradise, apply to TNT, put a question mark behind it, and then we could have that debate here on Talking Point. Of course, alongside me is my co-host, Mr. Keaton Shah. Keaton, is it debatable? Are we a paradise? I think we could get into semantics on the situation, but one of the interesting stories from yesterday, I'm not entirely completely wrapped my head around all the details, but it seemed as though we can't even do business with ourselves properly, much less expect to do it well with other people. Good morning, Keaton.
Good morning, Sean. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. And I will say Trinidad and Tobago is a paradise. I think we're a beautiful island, a beautiful culture. Honestly, I think it's an escape when you take a look at what's happening in other countries, and that's ironic considering on this program how many times you have to point out situations which are poor, which are bad, and which contribute negatively to Trinidad and Tobago on a whole. But that being said, I still believe that we're an island paradise. And I just honestly am of the opinion, and there will be those who disagree with me, and they're free to, that we, the people, tend to ruin Trinidad and Tobago. But otherwise, if we could work together, live together, Trans-City could be a much, much more beautiful place than it already is.
Well, I guess at the end of the day, we need to realize, okay, look, is it all doom and gloom? Are we all bad there? Because speaking about the rest of the world, I guess, if you want to do comparative analysis, you have protests still going on in Iran, where it seems as though the Attorney General did say, okay, we're going to get rid of the morality police. But then they executed a protester essentially for similar type of law, I guess I would say. He's protesting, but he was charged with enmity against God. Apparently, it's against God to protest something that you think is unethical. So, which I'm not saying that the charge is right or that is the case, but rather I'm just pointing out the fact that the same sort of justifications to have something like the morality police is why they executed this man. So I'm not necessarily sure that they're looking to give in or concede anything. They just want the protest to end. And it seems as though the consequence of losing your life is not necessarily enough to stop the protest this time. Iran is not necessarily, they have had protests before. It's not necessarily anything new to them. Meanwhile, China has given some concession, I think, because perhaps on a practical level, they're not necessarily improving their COVID situation. The economy is being harmed, and they're not necessarily saving any face by keeping up appearances. So we just saw in Germany that there was a report that came out yesterday that there was potentially, I think it's a right-wing or an extreme right-wing coup attempt. The ringleaders were arrested. I'm not entirely aware of all the details because given the size of Germany, 25 arrests, that's not necessarily everybody involved. And these days, the motivations of people can't necessarily be summed up in a quick sentence. But we see civil unrest, and we see various levels of aggressive crackdowns to that unrest across the world. Or we see people looking to cause civil unrest in a way that might destabilize or potentially destabilize a country in a region. We don't necessarily have that here. We did have protests a couple of years ago where there were complaints about the actions of the police. I don't necessarily think it got so bad yet. But Keaton, do you think we should be appreciative? Should we look to the rest of the world and say, well, we don't have morality police. We could protest and not end up executed for it. And we don't have a coup attempt happening with ex-military people that threatens our stability. Could we at least say that? Is that a good thing?
Well, I mean, when you described everything happening around the world as you just did, I think certainly for sure we can be grateful that we in Trinidad More or less, again, full of ironic statements this morning, are peaceful people when it comes to instability, because we have had protests across the nation that has disrupted movement and productivity. For example, the Beacon protest that took place a couple of months ago. There was the Sea Lots protest as well. So, I mean, yes, that does lead to disruption, and it certainly disrupts productivity as well. But to the extent that we see this happening for hours upon hours, days upon days, weeks upon weeks, because you mentioned Iran, and I don't think people understand that in Iran, every day a protest is happening somewhere, at least one. And you mentioned China as well, and I think China's certainly an amazing story to me, because following China over the years, an authoritarian system that is strict and is very quick to crack down on any form of protest. They don't even use any form of social media that the Western Hemisphere, the Western world uses. They actually have heavily censored social media as well to see what's taking place there. That, you know, it's truly amazing. I don't know if you heard, because I know you mentioned Germany as well, but yesterday, I think late last evening, the president of Peru, he tried to dissolve parliament.
Yes.
He failed in doing so. He was then impeached and a new president elected within the space of a couple hours. So yes, here in TNT there are a lot of positives, and they may be small and insignificant when you consider what's happening on the global stage. But that's the thing about TNT. Our frustrations are really, you know, spoken of through commentary and probably through social media, and that's just about it. You know, rarely do we have anything significant that will see the uprising of the people.
It's ironic, but as someone who consumes Chinese media, and I mean Chinese entertainment, we expect, because we see in Ukraine, Russian news and state media seems to be there's a very large divide between Russian media and the rest of the world. But at least with Chinese entertainment and cultural programming, I always found that as much as there is a lot of differences, there are also a lot of similarities. So to some extent, I'm not necessarily surprised that what happened in China happened. That said, one of the hallmarks with regards to various international bodies, I guess you could say, or governments or problems, is when you don't necessarily do your due diligence, you don't necessarily cross all your T's, dot all your I's. And one of the things that I referenced earlier with regards where we can't even do business with ourselves properly, well, reports have come out in a couple of the morning papers with regards to the TSTT scenario, where, you know, TSTT said the government owes us money, not just a small amount of money, a large amount of money, $700 million to $1 billion, depending on which publication you read. And now, there's a lot of different things, and they go through. The timeline is a bit long, but the long and short is it seemed as though TSTT, some of the agreements were done on a handshake. Eventually, they were turned into formal written agreements. Then they were expanded again on a handshake. And I'm just kind of wondering, whoa, why is it that a state entity for national security services, because it's about the CCTV cameras, it's about money owed for the service of installing, operating the CCTV cameras, as well as the command centers to view the footage, monitor the footage, and the storage of all of the footage, right? That's something pretty important. Why is it done at times informally, to the point where now it seems as though the government and TSTT is going to be, it's having a bit of a back and forth. You owe me this amount of money, no, we only owe you that amount of money. And it's a state entity speaking to the government. And of course, because we've had different administrations, it makes the situation less simple than that. But isn't this why we should, I don't know, put things in writing?
Well, I would assume that any business being conducted or any financial transaction, let it be 1 cent, to $100 million will actually be, scripted on paper. There should be a paper trail. But you mentioned TSTT and government, and that's just one example. I mean, I think before on the program, up to a couple of months ago, we were also speaking about how much money TNTech owes to National Petroleum Limited, NP. So it's all over Trinidad, across state entities. It's a similar situation that happened with EFCL. It's now happening to MTS. So, you're absolutely right in saying that we cannot seem to conduct business correct here in Toronto. I mean, it's very difficult alone for companies to establish a business here in TNT. The ease of doing business is ridiculous. Just to get your license to establish your company, it's extremely difficult and excruciating at times. It makes you wonder why people want to invest in TNT. The other side of it as well is you just mentioned state entities not paying money. When it comes to national security, I always question as to how is it so difficult, to get these things right, to get these things done, and that is why when I hear certain individuals saying that, dealing with the affairs of the nation, or the business of the nation, very seriously, yet we're letting these things slide. And it doesn't go for just that one ministry, it goes across the board. You really wonder whether or not it's deliberately done, whether it's done on purpose, because that way, you assume if you're driving on the highway and you see the cameras that are installed, you assume that they're working. I think now in TNT, it's the assumption that, that's not working. We had one colleague who was actually jogging in Chaguaramas and was knocked over by a motorcycle. The cameras all around Chaguaramas. And to the police, they said, "Oh, sorry, we can't help. The cameras are not working. This is a hit and run in Chaguaramas. Cameras are not working, so we can't really help." And they didn't investigate. That's a major crime, a hit and run. So sometimes you just wonder whether or not it's all on purpose. And when it comes to money here in Trinidad, as I said, we're the most transparent nation because we're so small. Everybody knows whose hand is in what. Everybody knows who's doing what. And it's an unfortunate tale, isn't it? It's really unfortunate, but I think we've grown so accustomed to it that it's no longer surprising as such. And by the way, let me just say, I am of the opinion, it was stated just before by a former union leader on this program, and the more I examine it, the more I take a look at it, especially services and how difficult it is to get certain things done. For example, just fixing the phone lines at WSN. Even up to now, still getting difficulties in doing that. But, I think TSTT really is going to shut down or dissolve, actually, and Amplia will take over. So maybe that's all part of it, sure. Maybe that's all part of the process.
Well, just to take this topic a little bit further. Recently, government said, hey, we have a $1 billion surplus. $1 billion surplus. Look at us. Look at this accomplishment. Except the amount of money that they owe potentially to TSTT, because I believe the government admitted they at least owe TSTT $400 million, right? But TSTT claims that it's more. Then TNTech owes money to its suppliers, in part because government owes money to TNTech. Government entities aren't paying their light bill. They're not being disconnected. So maybe people who are disconnected should protest by the unequal treatment. Then, of course, EFCL contractors are owed money. MTS has taken up the job. As far as we're aware, money is not flowing there, right? What about the Coast Guard situation? Remember the excuse that's given? Well, we don't have fuel for the boats, right? Things like that. All of these things. The TTPS, since Gary Griffith was commissioner, almost from the start of his term, so we're talking like 4 years ago or so, they had contractors for the TTPS that could not get money. The police service, the individual officers had to use their private funds to pay for food for their police dogs and police horses. So I would like to know, how is it we have a budget surplus when there's so many line items that can't seem to be paid for?
You see, this is something that is not something that's applicable to only one administration. Right? This goes back. It's years upon years of debt rising, but we have not been able to balance things at all. As much as this budget, the deficit was the smallest it's been for as far as I could remember. We really have not been able to balance our finances at all, and that 1 billion surplus. I mean, again, when you take a look at what's being said to the nation via outlets, whether it be directly from the ministers or from state entities, head of state entities, versus that one interview that the Minister of Energy and Energy Industry, Stuart Young, gave to CNN. And don't get me wrong, it's an international station. You have to have some level of public relations while you're out there. But this is the thing. You have absolutely no idea, no clue what's going on. You don't know what's taking place inside. You don't know what they're saying. You don't know what's actually being done. They can tell you one thing and do the complete opposite. And we may be none the wiser until it's too late. And too often that has happened. So in terms of finances, in terms of the business affairs of Trinidad and Tobago, I've often questioned, and I've listened to Minister Paula Gopi-Spoon in Parliament, for example, and I half the time I have no clue what she's speaking up or what she's speaking about. I don't even think she does. And when I listen to the Minister of Finance call him, gosh, that with all due respect to him, and he served TNT, I don't know exactly what he has achieved, but I suppose he has served TNT. But gosh, it sickens me every time that man speaks, because the sarcasm and the bubbly personality that he has when speaking total nonsense and inaccuracies. For example, when we got a boost in terms of our foreign exchange reserves following the drafts from the IMF, all those things, it really bothers me, because down here we're none the wiser. There's nobody to really educate us on these things. There's nobody to really correct these ministers on these things. I mean, I don't think the media does a very good job at it. We're in the media, and I mean, we try, whether or not we're actually successful in doing so. But all that is a part of it. And this is why I'm saying that we're very fortunate in Trinidad that we don't have that level of aggression or where there's that level of uprising. But probably because people in Trinidad need a bit more educating. And again, I'm not trying to sound harsh, and I'm not trying to sound as though I'm insulting people, but I'm simply saying that there's a level of ignorance that probably we don't even realize. And if we could correct that, probably then people might open up their eyes a bit more.
Well, folks, a $1 billion surplus, I think it's a $1 billion accounting trick. Just like there are lies, darn lies, and statistics, I think there are lies, blatant lies, and then there is accounting. We'll take a break. When we come back, Keaton has an interesting topic that I think is something that we do have to also, as a society, start to consider. It's not just about the things that are obvious. Sometimes it's the things we can't see. Stay tuned on Talking Point on WSN, your content capital.
Whether it's a room for 1, 2, 3 or more, there's a room waiting with the ocean view almost to your door. Cocoa Reef Resort and Spa, the perfect getaway when you don't want to travel far. The Cocoa Reef Resort and Spa, Crown Point, Tobago. Call 639-8571 for your reservation.
Your home a work of art. Step into a spacious place of creative ideas for your home space. Our floor and wall tiles and natural stone is ideal for any use you need in your home. Toilet, bathroom sets and vanities lend design to your creativity, while jacuzzis and shower enclosures create the mood for dwelling on life's pleasures. Lamps and lighting fixtures add ambience and memorable pictures. Hotel nights, tiles and bath, making your home a work of art. Closings Industrial Complex, Union Road, Marabella.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit?
Yes.
What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive, it is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole, it's for all of us in public.
Welcome back to Talking Point. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about might be something that you might not necessarily understand why you want to talk about it. Societal issues goes hand in hand with how the country is going, how the country is run. It then leads into not just social justice, crime, but it could even impact our economy and our politics. So, I mean, our demographics definitely will have something to play about these things. So the issue of marriage in the 21st century, I guess you could say, marriage and relationships, or perhaps the lack thereof, that is something that is now becoming a question, I guess you could say, more so for the developing world. It actually, I do remember a time when people thought the world would be overpopulated and we'll be overrun, and what are we going to do when we can't sustain ourselves? But the flip side is a lot of the growing economies have the reverse problem. But for more on that, because to get into the actual details of marriage itself and modern marriage, well, the realities, Keaton, you have some observations on this that you would like to make to start off the debate.
Well, I like how you introduced this as though you're interviewing me as though I'm a married man that has all the knowledge in the world. You know, I just know, not married, just to point out, right? But anyway, as with this topic, it's something that I've been observing over the course of the last year or two, and that is, one, you're always going to have individuals. All right, that's not the right way to start. Let's just start by saying that the world is a cycle. And they say that the past will always repeat itself. And before, you used to see a lot of couples actually, delaying marriage, getting married at much older ages, people focusing on their careers, wanting to ensure that they have a footing and that their lives are all set before getting into marriage and then a family life. And to be fair, there's still going to be people who do that. There's still going to be young individuals who would want that and who would be more focused on that than anything else. However, what I've been observing is that now I'm seeing a lot more younger individuals getting married. And when I say young, I'm speaking not as early as 23, 22, 23. That is occurring more frequently now here, at least in TNT, because I can't speak of outside of TNT. I've been trying to figure out why exactly. And I realized that, and listen to this very carefully, yes, arguably, there may be those who are truly in love, madly in love with this one person, and they think it's the right time. But there's also the possibility or the reality that 2 salaries are a greater safety net for a comfortable life rather than 1 salary. You know, people are getting married essentially for financial reasons. It's a theory, just based off of observations, for economic reasons, because it's getting more and more difficult to survive. 2 individuals getting married and pulling their resources together could hopefully lead to a comfortable life. And that's the situation here. Now, on the flip side, you may have those who do not want to get married at all or too scared of getting married for financial reasons because they have assets. They want to protect those assets, and out of fear, out of stories, out of situations, might not want to risk losing those assets for whatever reason, because I think the divorce rate in Trinidad really has gone up also. I think people are getting married and getting divorced very quickly now. And one side of it is that prenups in Trinidad, prenups are not recognized by the law at all. So people don't really have any way of protecting their assets if they get married, if that marriage doesn't work out. So there are 2 sides to it. I can't speak more to the second side with respect to prenups and people not wanting to get married out of fear of not being able to protect their assets. I'm just seeing more and more people, younger people, getting married because I suppose 2 incomes or the resources that 2 individuals can share with each other as compared to one surviving on their own, well, that's a greater safety net.
Well, you see, I always said that at the end of the day, when women entered the workforce, it changed the economies, because before a single income could have been a middle income household. But then eventually, just because of the, when two individuals in the household have more or less that middle income level job, right? It's going to skew things now. For the single income household is going to be half that. How are they going to maintain? Then there's the fact that we have more stuff. And inflation and the way how the economies have moved from the 50s till now, just how things increase in price, but then also what you need in order to maintain a certain standard of living. It's become a bit more difficult. There's a lot of things coming into play. But I think the main thing is the standard of the 2 income household for families. I think at some point that became the standard upon which the rest of the economy, I guess, is balanced around. So if you're a single income, if you're a single parent rather, things got a little bit more difficult and a lot less manageable just on the income side. So I could see where people are now going to look at marriage to be even more practical than before. Because before, people didn't marry because, double income. Before, people got married to have a family. Then eventually, it became more and more accessible for women to go to work, to have a career, and that opened up opportunities. But then the economy reset itself, and now people in this generation and the last few previous generations, they're looking at the benefits, because the benefits are now becoming a bit more. Which is funny, because in the past, when women could not work, there was, this is famous, you will see it in old movies like Pride and Prejudice. For their economic survival, they had to marry, right? We've done away with that, thankfully, but to some extent now, we've replaced it with, for everybody's economic benefit, they have to marry. It's not just women alone, now it's men and women, right? Is it, I mean, it's equal. Is it the best thing? Well, I think it's a thing that we just have to live with, to be honest, because you can't say women can't work.
But you also mentioned something, Sean, which is very important to add to the equation. Long ago, people used to get married. I mean, be really to have a family. You used to start it from young, you know, to really have a family. Now, the other side of it is that there are those who simply cannot afford to have children.
Or they choose not to.
Right? Or they choose, well, sometimes it's a choice, because it's another mouth to feed, and raising a child by no means at all is an easy feat. And if you don't have the support systems around you, and I'm not talking about support systems just like you know, your parents to help look after the child. I'm talking about financially as well. You don't have those resources, then you know I feel sorry, but that baby is not going to grow up in the life that they necessarily need or deserve.
It goes on more beyond that. We understand more things about child health now, about certain diseases and genetic conditions. Yeah. So there's that. Then there's the fact that also the demands and competitiveness of the world. You know, I think to some extent there are some parents, we know of at least one, where just how demanding the world is to say, I'm going to have offspring and then throw them out there in the world to be eaten by the wolves. Some people aren't necessarily looking to do that, or at least they figure, well, I could help one, I could raise one, I could pass on and leave a certain amount of generational wealth, which it doesn't mean wealthy, just means a certain amount of resources to help them. But they say to have the 6, 7, 8 children, that's way too difficult. They'll be way too disadvantaged if I do that.
Well, I suppose probably that's another reason why we're lucky in Trinidad, because we don't have any inheritance tax as well. Like I said, I mean, you know, you hear the stories all the time about babies being found in hospitals or being abandoned. And yes, that is a case in Trinidad, which, you know, I think we've heard of at least 2 stories in the last 2 months, you know, and I'm not looking forward to hearing any more of those stories. But simply is that the world population, the growth of the population, the speed at which it was growing has slowed, and it's going to continue to slow, according to I think the UN, United Nations, and I could be wrong, it's either WHO or UN. But anyway, all that is a factor to consider. I mean, over the course of the COVID-19 pandemic, psychologically, and this is something I'm pretty sure Sule could explore if he hasn't already explored, about people really, households and families really getting to know each other for the first time and live with each other for the first time. On the flip side, you had those who really grew some level of romance with a significant other. And now, as I said, at the age of 22, 23, are getting married simply because they have to pool their resources together, as you mentioned. Whether or not that is the ability to have children because of economic or financial stability or whatever the factor or situation may be, that's a completely different story. I think you're going to see more and more couples delaying having children and on purpose because they simply cannot afford it. And you know, now, especially in TNT, with the cost of living crisis, and I call it a cost of living crisis, it's very difficult for even a household, a couple, a young couple to survive. It's very, very difficult. Support system is now more crucial than ever before. Listen, you know, I'm not trying to preach to anybody, but you are fortunate enough to have a family or family members that support you. If you are fortunate enough to have family members who are there for you and who will never, ever hesitate to give you whatever you need or what is necessary, listen, you're blessed. You have no idea how blessed you are.
Well,
you're extremely blessed.
Well, there's a little bit more to this. I want to play this clip. I know we're coming up to the close to the break, but I want to play this clip and then maybe have just a minute for comments afterwards, because I think there's a flip side to this also. There's the fact that how we deal with human relations, as you started to talk about, and how we deal with human relationships has gotten a lot more complicated. Take a listen to this psychotherapist.
Our model today is that I want you to be whatever we always wanted from marriage: companionship, economic support, family life, social status. I also want you to be my best friend, my trusted confidant, my passionate lover, for the long haul, a long haul that's twice as long as it used to be. I want you to be the best parent, my intellectual equal, the one to inspire me in my career. I want you to be my anchor and my wave. I want you to offer me security and stability and predictability, and I want you to give me transcendence and awe and mystery and surprise. It's one person to give us what once an entire village used to provide. That is the modern concept. And it goes further. It goes further because there's a Jungian analyst, Robert Johnson, who I thought gave me something to think about that was really brilliant. In our secularized society, romantic love has become the most important engine of the Western psyche. So we turn to romantic love for things that we used to turn for in religion: ecstasy, meaning, wholeness, transcendence, all of those things we used to look for in the sanctuary of the divine. And today, I want you, my beloved, to offer all these things to me. So when you say marriage is work, I always ask you which model of marriage first. Then I will know which is the work we need to do. Marriages of today that manage to meet this, in which we conflate the spiritual and the relational by calling our partners our soulmates, do better than all the marriages of the past. That's the research of Eli Finkel in his new book. But the vast majority can't meet this new Olympus.
The vast majority cannot meet that new Mount Olympus. And I think that's the flip side to it. Not only is it that some people are looking at marriage as a convenient thing, an arrangement, more so than before, but then those who are seeing marriage as, okay, you find someone you love and you marry them, yeah, perhaps way too much of your needs. You're looking at this one person to provide all of these things for you. You're looking at marriage and you're blowing it up way too much. And I think in certain areas, maybe not so much in Trinidad just yet, but in certain areas of the world, you find that, well, people are complaining there's nobody to marry. And it's because the standards are so impossibly high. You more or less want, you need a perfect person that theoretically will never exist. So to what extent do we have that here?
I think it was rather interesting, listening to that clip, because it essentially tells me that marriage has become a form of escape from what's happening around the world right now. And I don't know.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, marriage certainly has become a form of an escape, and I really don't know. I could be wrong about this, and I hope somebody corrects me if I am wrong, that people are not falling in love and getting married. I don't think it's that anymore. I think people are getting married to fall in love. And that is also part of the problem. That is also part of the situation.
Or perhaps they fall in love with the idea of getting married.
And that's another way of looking at it as well.
Well, folks, the long and short is this could cause serious issues down the line. Just look at the one-child policy in China. That did cause their demographics to become unbalanced, and that became an issue that now China is desperately trying to reverse. But things like that take a while to get started. They also take a while to solve. Well, let's take a break. When we come back, there's another thing that we want to get into, and that is to say, how safe are we with regards to our crime? Stay tuned. Keith and Shaw, Michael Small. This is Talking Point. We'll be right back.
Your Christmas is safe with us at PCU. Police Credit Union. Police Credit Union. Your Christmas is safe with us at PCU. Police Credit Union. PCU. Police Credit Union.
Get an easy 0 interest
interest Christmas loan at Police Credit Union today. Borrow up to $25,000 with affordable monthly payments. New members, you get up to $10,000. No interest, no installments until January. Apply online at www.policecreditunion.com. Loan subject to credit approval.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The best birthday gifts are at dbesttoys.com. Shop for the best brands you love at the best prices. Like VTech, Leapfrog, Fisher-Price, Play-Doh, Hot Wheels, Barbie, Cocomelon, LOL, Baby Alive, Crayola.
Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 32DBEST to order. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
Better Value Limited has been making gift giving easier and more affordable for over 26 years. Power tools, indoor, outdoor furniture and accessories, mini appliances, designer fragrances, houseware and home decor products, and all your bridal registry items. Now in stock, our stylish loft bed and study desk combo unit for just $16.50. Better Value Limited. Call 235-3709 or visit us at Princestown or Gullview or check our Facebook page.
Christmas coming here is all around. Christmas back in town. Christmas coming here is all around.
Christmas is coming, and your fingers know it.
Christmas back in town. Christmas back in town. Christmas back in town. Oh yeah, I can feel it. Christmas back in town.
For a finger-licking good Christmas. KFC.
Back in town.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, with regards to the crime situation, I don't know what else to call it. I never really liked the phrase crime epidemic, but maybe that's basically what we have here. There's a couple of things we want to talk about. My co-host made an observation yesterday. He said I alluded to it, but he made the point. And I am making an observation with regards to a recent story and how it's being reported. But I'll start first with Keaton's point, and that was basically to ask, do we feel safe or could we be safe if we're not gang members? Because in theory, a lot of the murders and killing and violence is about gang violence. Keaton, am I summing up your point more or less as it is there?
Whether or not in TNT you're safe from any criminal activity or at least serious criminal activity, once you're not involved or know anyone who's involved in gang affairs. And that's really the question, because I know, maybe up to, 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago, you could have suggested that, listen, once you're not involved, you should be okay. And I think now that's no longer applicable. Well, for a while, it's actually not been applicable.
I mean, that's the thing, because children aren't involved. Okay, you could say their parents were involved, maybe, right? Obviously, if you're part of national security, you are by default involved. You're not looking to profit and be a criminal, but you are involved on the flip side. But my thing, though, is even if that was true 10, 12 years ago, right, it causes a situation to exist which could then get out of hand and grow. Because let me give you a tangential example. There has been reporting, now of course, apparently there's a warning, be careful, they will bounce your car to get you to stop so that then they could rob you. And I even saw on social media where it was like, beware, criminals have a new tactic in TNT. This is one of those social media pages. And I thought to myself, this is not new. Why is this new? I have heard of this years and years ago. Now, there's a flip side to that. Now when you get bounced, are you going to just assume that they did to rob you, and then how are we going to respond to that? Do we respond with aggression, with violence? Do we drive straight to the police station? Can we make it to a police station? Do we act suspiciously to anybody who bounces us? And what will be the consequences of that moving forward? And I think it's in a similar sense, if we just say, well, once we're not in a gang, we're fine. We're not pushing for the situation to be solved. We're just saying the situation doesn't bother us, we're fine. The consequences of that moving forward is the situation is not going to stop, and at some point it's going to get out of hand. If we just say, well, they're going to bounce us and rob us, well, the problem is now that every car accident might become a suspicion of criminal activity, and then you might get more vigilantism. You might get more quarreling in the road. I mean, Ashraf Ali spoke to us and said part of the issue with murders is that those social relationships, the amount of road rage we have these days, I'm dreading of what that could mean now, where people might have a hair trigger and say, well, I thought you was here to rob me, and we have somebody who just did a bad drive end up dead on the road.
Sean, listen, when was the last time you took a drive through St. James?
I try very hard not to drive through St. James, I'll be honest with you, just for the traffic alone.
You see, well, it's not just the traffic, it's the jaywalking as well, because, and I think this is the thing. We don't have enough walk paths, right, for people to cross the road. And by the way, there are those that are actually there for citizens to use, pedestrians to use, and they still don't use it, they just jaywalk. That's the thing, in TNT, you have this mentality, it's called bounce minute, right? Yeah. It's just that you could be driving, you could be obeying the laws on the road completely normal, and people are crossing on free will, and they don't care. They would give you the harshest of looks. There are those who are so spiteful, they will actually stop in the middle of the car, stare at you, probably curse at you, and then walk away. That level of ignorance as well, and that's the thing. Sometimes, or at least a majority of the times, you can't do anything about it at all. These are individuals, for a crime as minor as jaywalking, who like to take it to a different level, who are out there and bad, wrong and strong. There's nothing that you can do about it. And that is the mentality that has to change as well, because, we're speaking about whether or not, if you're not involved in a gang, then you should be safe. Well, I mean, home invasion, robbery. I know a gentleman on Saturday who was out with his family, an elderly man with his stepson, sorry, not his stepson, his son-in-law, his daughter, his grandchildren, out liming. He left the lime. He was going home with his wife. His grandfather got out of his car. Gunmen came out of nowhere, and I mean nowhere. I don't know where they're hiding now. And they pointed a gun at him and stole his car. And that's so common now, and that's what I mean, by the way, about the majority of the crime that takes place here in TNT is not reported by the media. So these figures are much higher, and in my opinion, in my belief, much higher than we actually know. Just take an example of
jaywalking. You can have a variation of the accident bump and rob, where I just throw it out there. Somebody walks out, I hit them, right? and then they get me to stop, and then they rob me when I come out and look to see who's, you know, if they're fine. And the consequence of that is eventually, if that becomes a frequent occurrence, drivers will have less regard for pedestrians.
And that's the thing as well, because the flip side of it is now, you know, your parents are educating you and telling you that, listen, don't look at anybody a certain way, don't talk to people a certain way, don't even make any comments. When people want to, you know, bombard you with words, or if they want to just be so aggressive, ignore it and walk on. You know, because the moment that you turn around and look at an individual a certain way, is the moment that could mean life or death in TNT, and I'm not exaggerating.
Mm-hmm.
That's the mentality of the people now. The moment you look at them a certain way, that could actually lead to either you continuing on your journey or it ending, and that's the thing, Sean.
So I like to point out where in my life there have been a couple of times where, you know, I've left my house and I have been the recipient of either the help from a stranger, or a stranger offered to help me, but I declined the help because it wasn't needed. And I just like to point out, you know, it's not as though everybody is going to be violent and there's, you know, you literally just have to walk on eggshells. But the flip side is, the criminals are the minority. You just don't know who it is that is driving next to you, walking next to you, you know, driving in front of you, etc., who you're encountering. Example yesterday, we're coming down one of these side streets, and a young man, who might be 6 or 7 years old, he's taking his time to exit his vehicle. So he's on the passenger door, the door is open, he's blocking the roadway. So we're waiting for him to move because we literally can't drive through him and the car door. And his mother comes out and scolds him. And in my mind, I applauded the mother, because the boy does not know who's driving the car. The boy does not know what the driver might do to him if the driver's annoyed or pissed off, or even the fact that the boy now is just in the middle of the road, potentially by himself, taking his time. He's young. Who knows who might look to kidnap a child in the middle of the road now. And the mother, of course, is like, why are you dilly-dallying here? Why are you blocking the road for? So this is the thing with our society. At what point do we now have to be like, whoa, we as common citizens need to be concerned with how we interact with people, because you never know who you're pissing off.
You need to be concerned all the time, Sean. Now more than ever, you need to be concerned. And by the way, we're speaking about this, and I'm not trying to shadow the fact that there's still a lot of good people out there.
Mm-hmm.
There's still a lot, those who represent what sweet TNT really, really is. And unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because I hope it's not something that's going to disappear eventually. It's disappearing, but I hope it doesn't disappear completely. The majority of those interactions that I've had are with the elderly generations, not with the younger generations. I mean, the younger generations lack basic manners, and it's not applicable to every single individual. But if you lack basic manners and common courtesy when you're growing up, you're not going to know anything better. You're not going to know anything different. And as I pointed out before, a lot of what is said in the household or done in the household could impact upon a child. That's not even news. That's not even like a scientific discovery or breakthrough. That is just common sense. You know, and if that scenario, Sean, I'm glad you raised it. You know, kudos to all the parents out there who are trying with their children, who are teaching their children and instilling these values from a young age. And you mentioned stopping in the middle of the road. The worst are these PH taxis, taxi drivers, who have no idea what an indicator is or how to use an indicator. They have not one clue. And they just stop as they please, whenever they please, abruptly. And you know what? If you hit them from behind, oh, good luck at the police station. Good luck.
I mean, therein lies the thing, right? I think one of our concerns is, as the situation devolves, you said it before, vigilantism could potentially be on the rise. I think a couple months ago there was that video that circulated social media where basically either a business owner or residents had a man tied up and was beating him and published the video on social media. And they was basically not plan assing him, but but giving him strokes. I can't remember with what. But then this could get worse. This could get worse as we have less and less trust in our neighbors and the people that we just encounter in the streets. And the way how the crime is going, and I think even the acting commissioner might have had to admit this, there is less regard for children and for elderly, much less for the common, average, everyday citizen, adult males, adult females. There's less regard for the vulnerable. So what do we expect is going to happen? And this goes back now to consequences. I think, like you, vigilantism will be on the rise as a consequence, and we will see it. But then the irony is vigilantism will always come with the innocent being caught up as well. That's the issue with vigilante justice. It's not always going to be meted out against criminals. It's also going to have innocent bystanders as victims. Folks, we have to take a break. When we come back, we'll open up the phone lines. You could state your piece with regards to anything that we had to say today. Call in and disagree with us. Let us know what you have to think. This here on Talking Point. We'll be right back. Here is your WESN News on the hour. My name is Sean Michael Small. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Driver granted bail for touching 12-year-old girl. Hazardous seas alert issued. Paria's health, safety and environment technician testifies. And internationally, Taliban conducts first public execution since return to power. Now for the details. A 44-year-old driver was granted bail with a surety in the sum of $150,000 when he appeared at the Chaguanas Magistrates Court after he was charged with sexual touching. The accused was also ordered to stay 400 meters away from the victim and her family. He is expected to reappear in court on the 19th of January 2023. Police reports indicate that during the period of the 1st of June 2021 and the 30th of June 2021, the victim was asleep in her bedroom when the accused entered the room and allegedly touched her on her private parts. The 12-year-old girl later confided in her mother, who made a report to the Child Protection Unit Central on the 30th of June 2021. CPU detectives launched an investigation which led to the arrest and the charging of the suspect on Friday the 2nd of December 2022. A hazardous seas alert, yellow level, has been issued by the Met Office. Large breaking waves in excess of 3 meters due to long period swells are likely along nearshore, north exposed coastlines of Trinidad and Tobago. Choppy conditions are also likely in the Gulf of Paria. Conditions will be amplified during high tides and exacerbated at spring tides. Effects will first be experienced on northern shorelines of Tobago and then Trinidad within a couple hours afterwards. Impacts include dangerous conditions for swimming and small craft operations near affected coastlines. Paria's health, safety and environment technician Andrew Dobson testified before the Commission of Inquiry on Wednesday. Dobson testified that if Paria Fuel Trading Company Limited had been constantly monitoring works being done by LMCS on February 25th, the 4 divers would not have died. Dobson said that if Paria had constant monitoring of the video screen in the hyperbaric chamber, this tragedy could have been prevented. The incident left one survivor, Christopher Boudram, who already testified before the inquiry. Internationally, the Taliban has carried out what is thought to be their first public execution since their return to power in Afghanistan last year. A Taliban spokesperson said a man was killed at a crowded sports stadium in southwestern Farah province after he confessed to murder. Dozens of the group's leaders, including most top ministers in their government, attended the shooting. It comes weeks after judges were instructed to fully enforce Sharia law. Well, that's the news on the hour on WESN. I'm Sean Michael Small. Thanks for watching.
Whether it's a room for 1, 2, 3 or more, there's a room waiting with the ocean view almost to your door. Cocoa Reef Resort and Spa, the perfect getaway when you don't want to travel far. The Cocoa Reef Resort and Spa, Crown Point, Tobago. Call 639-8571 for your reservation.
Welcome back to Talking Point. Of course, we're going to open up the phone lines. Just before we do, we should acknowledge, of course, the passing of former Minister Herbert Volney, who died at the age of 69. We offer our condolences from WSN to his family and friends. At the end of the day, while we might, I guess you could say, be very critical of politicians and their decisions and their policies, at the end of the day, they are still human beings, and we need to acknowledge that. We do. So the phone lines are open, folks. I think I'm already hearing one of the phones start to ring. Call in, tell us what you have to say. Of course, we went with a couple of unconventional topics here today. So if you have anything to add, or if you want to steer the conversation in a different direction, of course, the PDP and the THA is still in the news. And all I will say to Mr. Duke is, technically, no, it is not illegal. So if you do want to push that avenue or that angle, I would suggest you perhaps choose a different way to frame it. That might be more effective.
Can I just give a bit of good news?
Sure. Good news is always welcome on Talking Point.
I was reading this article that is now saying that flour prices across Trinidad and Tobago are actually starting to fall. I think Nutrimix has expressed that customers can save up to 9%. It's not just through Nutrimix, it's any product through NFM as well. So, I mean, that's really good news, especially though one might argue it's just 9%. That's still money that you save. That's still money that's in your pocket and not out in somebody's cash register. So I think that's some good news that I want to share. Considering all that has happened, seeing how flour is a basic commodity and basic things that we produce in order to consume, overall, that's good news. I thought we should share that and highlight that, because not very often we have good news.
So apparently, at least according to some publications, wheat prices globally might be going down to a new low. There's mixed articles with regards to the reporting in the last couple of days even, but it seems as though hopefully supply issues are being seen too, because I would imagine on this Christmas season, it's not necessarily a time when people are looking to, diet and go with less. We're all going to gather around for a Christmas meal and we're going to have a budget Christmas meal. Something tells me, at the end of the day, people want to celebrate and do something for the Christmas, as we like to say. Around the world, it's not unique to us. So the fact that hopefully, and I've always found it weird, a lot of the inflation seems to be a lack of supply, and the fact that we haven't necessarily been able to reach a new balance point. I understand that global economies, it takes a while to shift, but this is a good indication that things are hopefully heading in the right direction. But we do have a caller from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Good morning.
I listened to you guys this morning, and I'm trying to put some stuff into perspective. I have the country, and I look at national security, what do I say, crime and national security, education, health, infrastructure. And I have seen in my lifetime so far those things improve from coming up from the 70s and then decline. And the decline is so mind-boggling that I think it has declined to levels worse than where it was in the 70s. And you're seeing all these, a lot of money been put into these things.
Yes.
And the issue is we see this indisciplined population that we have. That is the root of all these things, you know. The corruption, everything. We have an indisciplined population, and until people start to realize they have to start to do it different, the people that are walking the straight and narrow and staying in line and doing the right thing, those people would be irrelevant because of those who decide that they're not going to do what they need to, what their job is. That's why you have a public service that declining. The people who need to do their job that they're being paid for, that is our problem. And then so you have a system where you have children now coming out of school and a sense of hopelessness. It is. I mean, and I'll keep saying this to you guys, you know. You all are kind of a ray of sunshine in the maze of mess. And continue to do what you're doing.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you, caller.
Just want to say quick, I think because there's no consequence, we're not seeing it being corrected. Because I think there have been similar stories like what we are hearing with TSCT. Oh yeah, we'll do deals on a handshake and commit tens of millions of the national budget on a handshake and a verbal agreement. And I think you've had probably that around the world. The difference is at some point when things fall apart, there are consequences. But in TNT, when is the last time that an elected official rarely faced the heavy hand of the law? I think we have another caller.
Hello.
Hi, good morning, caller.
Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Well, I wanted to, along the same lines as the gentleman who was just speaking to you, and I want to ask a question. Is it a crime when you're working in a state company and the head of the department asks you to participate in a level of corruption, and when you do so, you're ostracized? Right? That's one. So we always highlight the crime that these young men doing all around Trinidad and Tobago. But we are not looking at circumstances and the fact that our education system does not facilitate them in one way or the other. Right? They're left behind. Right? Now, if you look at these systems, and I've told you about this already, but if you look at the system that was put in place in the 1970s, by Dr. Eric Williams and his government at the time, it actually fell down because of lack of proper management, which would have supplied this country with everything from trade to persons in the agricultural sector. But we turn a blind eye to the corruption in the state agencies, and we look at, and also to emanating from the political parties. Right? And if we don't start to look at it from that standpoint, we have nowhere to go. And we have to change our political approach, the system. And we have to have some form of recall, right? Because in relation to non-performance, right? And let me ask you another thing too. Is it a crime when you do a contract in in the government service, and the person come to you directly and say, hey, you have to give me something, you know, boy. You have to give me something, right? And we are talking about a little $20 or lunch something, right? So we have to look at that one. We have to highlight those situations. Now understand the impact that the street crime would have on the citizenry. I understand that. But what is the impact when an HOD asks you to write up fake invoices, you refuse to do so, right? And they ostracize you. Good. What is the impact then on your family life, right? So did that HOD commit a crime against me in the same manner that the young man who hold me up at gunpoint, take my vehicle, right? How does it, what is the difference? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Caller.
Caller, the difference is at least violent crime gets the lip service of crime fighting, and white collar corruption, I don't even know really if we get even that. We do have a caller from Port of Spain. Good morning.
Good morning to you, Sean and Keaton.
Good morning.
I really want to pose a question of you guys this morning, if you would allow me. Do you believe anybody in this society is concerned about inept governance, poor governance? Do you think anybody is concerned about all the reports of corruption that we hear about? Do you think anybody is remotely concerned about who is to be held accountable based on all the information coming out of the Paria Commission? Could you give me answers, and then I will just give you my other 30 seconds.
Caller, to answer you, from my standpoint, I think as long as an individual is benefiting in some form or fashion, they don't care. They're not concerned with that. It's not their problem. It's not their issue. As long as I have my plate of food and my bank account is secure, I don't think they really care about that. The thing is that we have more and more people whose bank accounts is becoming insecure already there. So
my answer to that is, do I think they're concerned? Yes. And they feel bad and how bad it is, and you know, and then we'll talk about how bad it is and how upset we feel and how things should be better. But wait, will you come with me to do something about it? Oh, no, I don't have time for that. Oh, no, I don't want to be victimized by the government because I depend on them, because the same government that I'm bad talking is the person who I want to be my employer, my preferred employer, because I'd rather do work when I get employed by the government. But things are bad, and we should talk about how bad they are and be upset and march and protest, but give me my 20% and don't retrench my workers, because we all want to have our easy government job.
I think you've looked at it, Sean, from one organization, but go on, Caller.
So guys, so am I fair to say in this Christmas season, I promise myself I'm going to be kind in everything that I say this Christmas season. Is it fair to say that if both of you were ministers of government, you all wouldn't be remotely concerned about none of the concerns happening in the country? Because really, if you look out your window this morning, everything is peaceful in the streets. People are going about their way. I mean, what causes us grief is the fact that somebody might drive up and want to ask you for your phone and your wallet. But outside of that, I mean, things are safe, right? The country is not on fire. Nobody is remotely angry about anything. You walk up by Ingrid there to get your lunch. You go in there, everybody's smiling and happy. They're, making small talk. You go next door to Cheyenne's to get a nice Indian plate. It's the same story. And maybe that's the problem in Trinidad and Tobago. You see, you saw yesterday where the German police arrested a whole heap of people across the landscape because they were plotting to take over the government, because they believe the government is not being run properly. you cut to another part of the world, the Taliban is executing people again publicly. And you cut to right here in the United States of America, and we witnessed a major contest where everybody, I would say most people in Georgia, came out to either support the blue or the red. But people are excited and passionate about what is happening because they want the best for their society. Do we get the impression that people in Trinidad want the best for our society?
Nope.
You all have no answer for that?
At any long run, no, because we don't see the
people in Trinidad
results.
wanted the best for their society,
we don't see the
with
results.
105,000 people eligible to vote in the PNM election, rain or no rain, flood or no flood, we should have at least had 50,000 people voting.
All right, caller, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut you there because we have another caller that's been waiting for the last 2 minutes. Sorry about that. But we hear your point, and I do believe, Keaton, I was just speaking about one entity. I could even see a minister say the same thing. Oh, how that's so sad. Look, crime is so bad. It's so bad. Do something about it. No, I don't want to do anything about it.
Very quickly, before we go to the other caller, to the first caller from San Fernando, you said we live in an indisciplined society, which is a blanket statement. I'll take it one step further. Indisciplined, ignorant, and sometimes narcissistic society.
Caller from Santa Cruz.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning, gentlemen.
Morning. Sorry for the wait.
No, not a problem. People making valid points. There is a calypso called The Portrait of Trinidad by the mighty Sniper that came out many, many years ago. I think I was still a child. And in that calypso, he says, the things that we say about here is really too much for him to bear. And then he talks about all the wonderful things that have been done in TNC. But let me tell you, as someone having been born in Trinidad and Tobago in 1956, emigrating in 1970, I have been part of and have seen and understand the Bounce-Manor culture. So that didn't just start. But I've also seen, and when I come back, be totally frustrated at the fact that in 2022, we still do not have sidewalks for people to walk on. And every time I see a woman walking with children, and she has to walk in the street and put the child up on some high embankment because there is no sidewalk, it makes me angry. What Sniper may have said about the things that we say about here is really too much for me to bear. I have to say that in 2022, the things that I see going on in Trinidad and Tobago are really too much to bear because we should not be in this situation. Yes, there is anger on the streets. When I came back and I looked at, right in St. James, at how people jostle just to get to the intersection and stop. And how there is like little to no courtesy. Yesterday I tried to help an elderly woman that came off a bus and she didn't want my help. Good and fine. Why was it necessary for a woman standing in the line to say, yeah, you see me and them people, when you see they ain't want your help, they just put you in your place. What place? There is nothing wrong or to be lost because you are courteous and kind. So if they don't need your help, they don't need your help. That is nothing for you to remark about being put in place. What place was I put in? We have a foolish mentality. We have developed over the years a very foolish mentality in Trinidad and Tobago. One where there is a government that cares not for this country, for the citizenry of this country, because if they did, they would make sure that these electric lines that are covered with all manner of flora and fauna was non-existent, because there would be a maintenance department whose job every day that they went to work would be to making sure that lines are in order, that there are no trees growing on the electric poles, that the poles aren't dragging in the street, that the bus driver doesn't have to stop the bus, come out, lift the cable, and I saw this on the old road yesterday. That's why I'm speaking from experience. Doesn't have to come out, lift the cable out of the road so that the bus could pass. There'll be maintenance. There would be sidewalks so that people, if they walk in the night, don't drop their foot down in a hole because they thought there was a continuing sidewalk in front of someone's house.
Eric, we hear you. Thank you very much.
I'll have to ask you, I'm sorry, but we have to cut you there because we have to take a break. But we hear what you have to say. And, well, hold on. We have a caller from Tobago that I'm being told to take first. Good morning, caller. Caller?
Good morning.
You're live. We only have about a minute.
Morning.
Pleasant good morning to the panel.
Good morning.
Now, I'll be very brief. We have two leaders, one in Trinidad, one in Tobago, but they are from Tobago. But they care nothing about Tobagonians. Nothing whatsoever about Tobagonians. And I am telling my Tobagonians, always stay focused. Let us get this thing going, and to get, because they don't care about us. We have something, let us keep it. And if we continue so, we're going to end up like some part in Africa, some part in India, some part in Libya, and I have seen it, and I'm elder than both of them. You're going to be hearing me more and more. I have more to say because I have to acknowledge.
All right, caller, but I have to thank you there. I'm sorry, but we have to take a break.
Thank you, caller.
I mean, he said it, folks. We could end up like other parts of the world. He just listed them. We have to take a break. When we come back, we'll wrap up the show here on Talking Point. Stay tuned.
Your Christmas is safe with us at BCU. Police Credit Union. Police Credit Union. Your Christmas is safe with us at BCU. Police Credit Union. BCU. Police Credit Union. Get an easy zero-interest Christmas loan at Police Credit Union today. Borrow up to $25,000 with affordable monthly payments. New members, you get up to $10,000. No interest, no installments until January. Apply online at www.policecreditunion.com. Loan subject to credit approval.
Whether it's a room for 1, 2, 3 or more, there's a room waiting with the ocean view almost to your door. Cocoa Reef Resort and Spa, the perfect getaway when you don't want to travel far. The Cocoa Reef Resort and Spa, Crown Point, Tobago. Call 639-8571 for your reservation.
Poolside nights, hands and bath, making your home a work of art. Step into a spacious place of creative ideas for your home space. Our floor and wall tiles and natural stone is ideal for any use you need in your home. Toilet, bathroom sets and vanities lend design to your creativity, while jacuzzis and shower enclosures create the mood for dwelling on life's pleasures. Lamps and lighting fixtures add ambience and memorable pictures. Poolside nights, hands and bath, making your home a work of art. Hosins Industrial Complex, Union Road, Marabella.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Psyched. Thursdays at 11:30 a.m. only on WESN, Content Capital. Of course, we don't have much time to respond in detail, but yes, consequences of indiscipline is growing corruption. Hanging power lines and sidewalks, roadways without sidewalks, unsafe for pedestrians. These things, people, they might seem small, but again, indiscipline seems small until it reaches corruption. When our infrastructure problems seem small until they fall apart, well, what are we going to say when it happens? It's harder to find the money to fix it then. Keaton.
As I close, I just want to remind callers, please, to everyone, just be mindful of the time, because we actually limit you to 2 minutes. We don't want to cut you when you're making your points, but there are those who go to 3, 4, 5 minutes, and we really have to cut you. So just please be mindful of that so everybody gets a fair chance. Also, to the caller from Port of Spain, no true words were ever said, and the city go burn down and be jamming still. I mean, let's be honest. Right? And finally, to the caller from St. James who had called and questioned if a head of department or somebody in any state entity asks you to sign fake checks or fake contracts if you're ostracized. Let me tell you something. I didn't get to answer your question today, and I will answer it tomorrow. Have you ever heard of Gene Miles and the 1967 Commission of Inquiry into the granting of licenses for gas stations? Gene Miles, tomorrow we will get into that. And that hopefully will answer your question a little bit. But thank you very much to all our callers and to our director, Sean Michael Small. Listen, this Christmas, this season, and into next year, if you can give a can, if you can give a meal, whatever you can give, please just give. Everybody needs a good friend right now. Everybody out there is a friend in need. Everybody needs some help and a good neighbor.
And I'll just wind up by saying this. There's corruption. And yes, they do care about us, but the corruption does not. And that's what's going to take precedence, not the good nature of the human society. And our good nature of ignoring it and giving people a blie, well, the chickens come home to roost. Folks, we're all in this together. Let's not give up, but we need to all do our part. We will continue discussion tomorrow, same time, same place. Keita Sean, Michael Small. Thank you and goodbye.